Good morning. Today is Sunday, September 8th, 2024. There is a solid, well-documented strategy to help a difficulty in any relationship when someone irritates you. It could be a spouse, it could be a friend, really any relationship. And someone does something or says something that bothers you. So the strategy is known as an I statement. I've mentioned this before, and I think it's helpful to understand how it works, why it works, and how to do it properly to be able to get the full benefit that it can offer in our relationships. And I was reminded of this reading a recent article by Catherine Pearson. So here's the scenario. Imagine you and your spouse or you and your friend or really any relationship. And you're telling, let's just say spouse, use that example. You're telling your spouse a story. And you're just getting to the important part of the story. It's important to you. Something momentous that happened at work, or something that remarkable that happened when you were out doing some shopping or taking a walk, something significant to you. And you realize that the other person, the person you're speaking to, there are only two people in the room, the person you're speaking to is staring at their phone. Now, your first instinct might be to get upset because it's rude, and you might want to say something like, I'm telling you something that's important. Why are you looking at your phone? Why aren't you paying attention to me? But you may realize, if you've had that type of conversation before, that the likelihood of that leading to a good outcome is quite minimal. And so you might want to try a more enlightened approach. And this enlightened approach that you're going to take would be that you say as follows. You say to this person, I feel frustrated when you look at your phone when I'm talking to you. So if you're able to do that, congratulations, because you have successfully used an I statement. That is a communication tool. It's something that is recommended by therapists, by counselors, by rabbis, not always practiced by those people, but recommended strongly by them. And it helps to get to the goal that you want. It helps to curb the defensive reaction that we often get when we criticize someone. It helps to get to a more fruitful, constructive conversation about the issue. And it helps, yes, it helps even to fight better. We've talked about this many times, that every relationship has fights, has arguments, and there are ways to do it in a more healthy way, in a more positive and constructive way. So, the basic recipe for an I statement goes like this. I feel X when Y happens. Now, you have to be careful, because just because you start the sentence with I feel like, that is not a true I statement. If I say, I feel like you're acting like a jerk, right? That is an observation or criticism. That's not a feeling, right? I feel like you always leave your dishes in the sink. I feel like you never listen to me. Those are not feelings. Those are criticisms that just start with the words I feel like. That's not an I statement, and that's not particularly helpful. one of the experts in describing how to do this is John and Julie Gottman. Now, I have shared their names with you before. They are world-renowned psychologists in the area of couples therapy. There is something called the Gottman method. I've discussed this with you before. So they describe how this I statement should go as follows. So first, you say how you feel. You describe what is happening. And you finish by saying what you need. So again, to go back to that conversation at the beginning, I'm telling you something that is important to me, and you're looking at your phone. So you would say, I feel alone when you're looking at your phone and I'm talking to you. And something that I've been thinking about is I really need your undivided attention while we're eating dinner at the dinner table. So if you can start with I feel and then have an emotion, a feeling, and then what do I need from you? Why does it work? So this is based on something that I just mentioned Thursday night. The reason that an I statement properly done can be helpful is because when I start with you instead of I, that's an accusation. Clean up your dishes. Why do you always make a mess? Why don't you listen to me? And the normal reaction that a person has when they are accused is, number one, to become defensive, and number two, to stop listening, because who wants to listen to being criticized? Yes, I know. We discussed the judges, the Dayanim, and the Sanhedrin. They have to be people who respond differently. Okay. So if your relationship is with someone whose character traits are on the level of the judges, the Dayanim, of the Sanhedrin, like we discussed Thursday night, Baruch Hashem, fine. But for most of us, in most of the relationships we have, and probably if we've encountered this before, we know what the response is going to be, and we know how we feel when someone says it to us. You always, or why don't you ever, usually does not end up well. Now, the I statement may sound simple in theory, but it can be difficult. It can require a lot of self-discipline to use it because, again, the immediate response that I might feel is, again, you left the dishes in the sink. Again, you threw your clothes on the floor. Why do you always make such a mess? Why don't you listen to me? I mean, that is kind of an intuitive way we may think about responding to these situations. And of course, I'm just using a couple of light examples, but you substitute your own example for this. So to use an I statement requires forethought. You can't just blurt out what you think at the moment. You got to think it through. What are you going to say? And we know how hard that is. And also requires practice. Doesn't happen right away. There's a woman who is a professional therapist in marriage counseling. And she says it took her years to get good at learning how to be able to use these kinds of statements effectively. And also, of course, there are limits. This isn't a magic bullet that solves everything, because there's no guarantee that your partner, your spouse, whoever you're speaking to, will agree to meet your need simply because you made this good faith effort to communicate in a more constructive way. So we should think of I statements as just one tool that can help any relationship. But of course, there are other aspects to it. For example, timing is very important. We've discussed this before. You're probably not going to have success at trying to get someone to pay attention to your feelings when they are preoccupied with some kind of deadline, or when they are tired, or when they're hungry, or when they're already upset, or when they are taking care of children that are crying. You have to pick your battles. You have to know when to be able to have a constructive conversation. Again, it requires forethought, planning out what you're going to say, not just blurting out how you feel in the moment. And it requires practice. So again, no guarantees, but these are well-documented, solid strategies, tools that we can learn in order to improve our relationships. Because using I statements effectively does work. It does help. And if we can improve our relationships, especially the closest relationships we have, we will also improve our lives. I hope that you, and I hope that I, can try to learn to do this better than I am already doing it. I wish you all a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.